we love to think of ourselves as being the champions of freedom in America. I'm happy to say that I agree with that.
Yeah.
Based on all my travels, I definitely agree with that. But first in freedom is the thought freedom. If you're free to do all sorts of other things, free to drive your car, free to go shopping, but you're not thought free, then the rest of it's pointless. So what I thought of myself as doing, when I taught philosophy, was by presenting one philosopher after another, and having the students go crazy, wanting to know, but who's right? Who's right? Who's right in this? You just say, look, I just want to expose you to these different possibilities for the sake of your freedom.
Elon Musk always says that the only truth is really physics, everything else is a suggestion. So in his view, you'd be making suggestions.
That's what I was doing. Each person that we covered, I did my best to present in the most plausible form so that they would be won over. For 1 week, they would become a Voltairean, right? For another week, they would become a Rousseauvian, follower of Rousseau. And then when we got on American pragmatists, which were kind of my favorites, somebody would say, well, it looks to me like William James pretty much has it. And I'd say, yeah, but wait until next week.
So, fascinating interview with Jeffrey and Irina. This is a very unique conversation because Jeffrey and Irina both have a very interesting life story that allowed them to end up where they are today. And it might be a different type of conversation that we've had on the channel, but nonetheless, very much fits the mold of a maverick mind. So how was your conversation with Jeffrey and Irina?
I enjoyed it so much. You know, Jeffrey and Irina are both so much one of a kind. I mean, you're not going to get many Jeffrey Gellers in this world, and you're certainly not going to get many Irinas. So, you know, Jeffrey is a philosophy professor, and Irina was a Korean refugee who ended up in Russia, in a very, very, backward area of Russia, became a star academic at the Moscow University, which is like it is the finest university in Russia, managed to get her way to the United States, immigrate, and become a professor here. And between the two of them, with this disparate academic background, they retire to this tiny little village, tiny little town in South Carolina. And what do they do there? They start this gigantic, beautiful art gallery in the middle of nowhere. And it's an extraordinary art gallery. I mean, we do a tour of it after the interview, which I think we'll publish separately. But, this is one of a kind. There's just nothing like it. And it would be so valuable for we who build and focus on the race and, look at modern it would be so good to take a beat and listen to what these guys have done and see what they've done. It really is worthwhile.
I think it's such a wonderful representation of the artistic spirit in every human. From my vantage point, I think every human has some sort of, and this is something my wife made me wise to, as I'm sure your wife has as well, that art isn't everybody. And we're all artists at the core. Humans are a creation that is almost artful in a way, and we also have a song or an art piece to write ourselves. And a lot of us, do it through our work or through our passions or through family. There's so many different ways of creating our art. And I think this conversation is very representative of that, and it's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah.
I'm so delighted to have done it. I'm proud of this piece, and so I hope people enjoy it.
I think they will. And here's a conversation now with Larry and Jeffrey.
So we toured this beautiful studio, and we learned about what a great art curator you are, but that's not your background. You're actually not a trained art curator. You have an entirely different background. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Going how far back?
Well, Let's talk about where you came from. Where were you born?
I was born in Wyoming, in Evanston, Wyoming.
Wow.
Yeah, which is down on the southwest side of Wyoming, closest to Salt Lake City.
Right.
And I lived there for my first 10 years. I have to introduce my father into this because he's the one who sort of moved the family around. My parents had a total of 6 kids. I was the oldest of the 6. And my father had taught flying during World War II. Never fought in combat, but just taught other people to go over and fight in combat. After the war, he came back to Evanston, set up a couple of businesses, and then ended up going back to college to finish his last year. He interrupted his studies to go to the Army Air Corps, and he finished at University of Wyoming in aerospace engineering. Got a job at Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California, and so the family packed up like the Beverly Hillbillies,
right,
and moved to Southern California. And my dad worked at Lockheed for a long time until 1982, in a lot of very interesting roles. But during that time, I went from 3rd grade to 12th grade. I went to school in Southern California. That was a very happening place in those days. And after that, I went to Cal State Northridge.
Yeah.
And got a degree in philosophy. And that's a little bit of an interesting story itself. I'm going to tell it to you very quickly, okay?
Sure.
Because philosophy doesn't make any sense to my family. My father's an engineer. I have 3 brothers who are engineers. Everybody's in engineering, right? And
you have sisters as well.
I have a sister. She's got a degree in psychology.
Okay.
She lives in Hawaii. I have the brothers all live in California or Oregon. And my parents have passed away. I started off as a math major. I was a math major for my first year. And what I discovered then was that being a math major requires work. No matter how good you are at math, you've got to devote yourself to it, and you've got to study and study and study. And so I started exploring other options. At the time, I was a little bit of a protester. I was a protester. This is 1969 to 1974. Vietnam, exactly. And so during that time, I tried out a few majors. I switched first it's pretty standard, I think, to try out majors, explore yourself while you're exploring possibilities for how you're going to fit into the world. Tried political science, not happening. Tried psychology, not happening. And then it turned out that when I look back at my first 2 years, the only classes I had enjoyed were philosophy classes. So I said, what the heck? However, I still don't know today, having taught it for 38 years, exactly how to define philosophy, though I could do it if you asked me, just because you would ask me to do it.
So I'm going to ask you because, our viewers, somewhat removed from philosophy.
Yeah.
There are not many who have read philosophy or read of philosophers, although I dare say most would recognize many of the names, but tell us a little bit about what philosophy, and then the why philosophy.
Okay. First of all, let me just say what philosophy is really quickly. Yeah. I said I wouldn't do it, but I'm gonna give you the etymology of it. Okay, it's pretty fun. Phil is in ancient Greek. In Greek is love, and Sophia is wisdom, right? And we still use those words, obviously, mainly as names. So philosophia is the love of wisdom, and it turns out that the very first kind of canonical philosopher who's known to everybody. He's a wonderful person, famously homely and very, very lovable, Socrates.
Yeah.
And Socrates' student was Plato. Plato's student was Aristotle. And basically, everybody after Socrates sort of betrayed the original spirit of philosophy, because what philosophy is never-ending pursuit, with the emphasis on the activity of pursuit, not on the discovery of truth. Truth is sort of more or less a process word in the kind of philosophy practiced by Socrates, not for Plato, not for Aristotle. And Plato and Aristotle have pretty much dominated the philosophical scene for the last 2,400 years. So it became the pursuit of truth, and every philosopher since them has said, Eureka, I've got it.
Yeah.
I've got it. I know what the truth is.
Yeah. And then being some pretty evil people who've derived the same view of the world with, starting from that particular point of view.
Yeah. But just the idea of just having the kind of arrogance to be able to make the claim that they've discovered the truth. And it comes down to building a system, right? So philosophy became a building of systems. The way I taught philosophy for 38 years, 3 years at Duke and 35 years at UNC Pembroke, was to introduce students to one philosopher after another. There's starting off with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, working our way up to people like St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, and then to the canonical figures like René Descartes. A lot of these people you will have heard of, and your listeners your viewers will be aware of a lot of these people because of the fact that they were nearly all mathematicians. Right. I mean, famously, Descartes formulated the idea of analytic geometry, right. Cartesian plane, and Leibniz was the co-inventor, along with Isaac Newton, of the calculus. And these people were all philosophers as well as mathematicians. And so what I do is present my students with, almost on a week-by-week basis, with this philosopher, then that philosopher, then that philosopher, hoping that none of them will ossify, so that they can develop kind of a dynamism in their thought process. And the purpose of that is just to increase their freedom. Because, and I'm sorry if I'm going overboard on that.
No, I'm following.
Okay. Okay.
It's interesting to me. So
okay, what we love to think of ourselves as being the champions of freedom in America.
Yeah.
And I am happy to say that I agree with that.
Yeah.
Based on all my travels, I definitely agree with that. But first in freedom, that's, by the way, what we have on one of our license plates here in North Carolina. First in freedom is the thought freedom. I mean, if you're free to do all sorts of other things, free to drive your car, free to go shopping, but you're not thought free, then the rest of it's pointless. So what I thought of myself as doing when I taught philosophy was by presenting one philosopher after another, and having the students go crazy, wanting to know, but who's right? Who's right? Who's right in this? You just say, look, I just want to expose you to these different possibilities for the sake of your freedom. And I told them outright what I was doing.
Yeah. So, the relationship of philosophy to math and science is very clear, because when you go back to the formation of the Royal Society, which is the oldest scientific society in the world, or at least in the Western world, we have to be a little modest here, but it was actually originally a philosophical society. That's how it was formed, and there was no mathematician or scientist in those days who did not think of themselves as a philosopher. And classically, Newton and all of those great scientists read philosophy, and each had their little quirks and strange, ideas of what the truth may be. But So a lot of our science stems from that, and I can appreciate that. Elon Musk always says that, the only truth is really physics. Everything else is a suggestion. So in his view, you'd be making suggestions.
That's what I was doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But without committing myself to any of them.
Right.
But at the same time, each person that we covered, I did my best to present as in the most plausible form, so that they would be won over. For 1 week, they would become a Voltairean, right? For another week, they would become a Rousseauvian, a follower of Rousseau. And then when we got on American pragmatists, which were kind of my favorites, somebody would say, well, it looks to me like William James pretty much has it. And then I'd say, yeah, but wait until next week. Anyway.
So can you give our audience an understanding of some of the American philosophers and their role, their place in the evolution of philosophy?
Yeah, I can, I think. American philosophy started off being derivative, as you would expect.
Obviously.
Because we had sort of a foot in the European door and a foot in the kind of frontiersman door here in the United States, even before it was the United States. One of our first philosophers, just because he was such an original thinker, was Benjamin Franklin.
Absolutely.
But American philosophy didn't get going for a while as a unique entity. We do have Ralph Waldo Emerson,
yes,
who is I think a very good philosopher, but the Europeans didn't resonate with him because they thought that he was just sort of an offshoot of the Romantic tradition, the German Romantic tradition, and they thought if we want that, why get the secondhand version? Let's just go to Hegel, go to the source. So American philosophy really got going with a guy named Charles Saunders Peirce.
That's a new name to me.
Okay, it's spelled with E-I, not I-E. It's not Pierce, it's Peirce. So it's one of those. It's one of those exceptions to the I before E, except after C. His name is Peirce, P-E-I-R-C-E. Charles Saunders. And
where does that name come from?
Why don't you ask me more questions I can't answer?
All right, I'll store them.
I'm pretty sure that he was British. I'm pretty sure that he was British. Although in those days, a lot of people did work in German philosophy. They would go to Germany to study for a while, and I think Peirce did.
Okay.
But what Peirce said was this, and I don't know if your viewers and listeners are gonna appreciate this at all in the short amount of time I'm gonna spend doing this. But there are various theories of truth, right? Various theories of truth. The main one is a very simple theory called the correspondence theory. And that is, some proposition is true if and only if it corresponds to and accurately pictures the relevant part of the world. So for example, there's some goofy little examples like the cat is on the mat. The cat is on the mat as a proposition is true if and only if, in fact, the cat is on the mat, right? Okay, that's the correspondence theory. But there are other theories of truth, and I can't go into those now because it would take too long to elaborate, but another theory is the coherence theory, which is for people who reject the very idea of material existence.
Yeah.
And there have been a heck of a lot of them, some very famous ones, some of them being St. Augustine, and most famously probably Plato. Plato was an idealist, meaning that he straightforwardly denied the existence of the material world. And so you have Plato, St. Augustine, and then you had Hegel, Georg Friedrich Hegel in Germany, and there were a whole bunch of German idealists.
Not to mention Schrödinger, but but that's an aside.
Okay. The coherence theory of truth is for people who reject the reality of the physical world, because it wouldn't make any sense to them to say that the cat is on the mat is true if and only if there's an independently existing fact, a physical fact of the cat being on the mat. Okay, so those are the two main theories. The pragmatists came along, mainly Charles Saunders Peirce in the beginning, and said, there's another theory of truth. And this is what put America on the philosophical map. What makes something true, according to Peirce, is not correspondence, it's not coherence. Rather, it's whether the adoption of a belief, say the belief that the cat is on the mat, makes it possible for the believer to get along in the world more effectively than he or she would if he did not or she did not adopt that particular belief.
It's a very American view of the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, this is how we manage to grow and build and create, because our beliefs allow us to get along in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
without
very American.
Without getting dogmatic.
Yeah. But I joked about Schrödinger a little bit ago, but Schrödinger's cat.
Yes, I do.
So I mean, that's the same. That's kind of a physical, a physics view of the whole idea of the whether the cat exists or not, or whether it's real or not. So there's a strange parallel between philosophy and science, but I guess
Science became, especially in Elon Musk's physics, it became more and more philosophical, coming back to its roots.
Yeah.
With mainly starting with Einstein.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So at any rate, I'm going to try to finish the answer to the question of why philosophy for me.
Yes.
So, I was captivated by it, and it also tends to get to presuppositions, right? That whenever you study things, you're starting from a foundation which is generally unacknowledged. Generally, the foundation you're operating from is something that you're not even aware of, because it's like the analogy that philosophers use is that when the eye looks, it can see everything outside of itself, but it doesn't see itself. And people do not see the framework that they're operating through. They're operating within, and they're operating through. So what I liked about it was just its foundational nature, and the fact that all these various philosophers, in proposing their truth, were also exposing new ways of seeing things. And that's where Wittgenstein came in. And I ended up writing my dissertation on Wittgenstein's critique of Sigmund Freud, and mainly because of that. I love the idea of the kind of self-knowledge that is necessary for people to avoid the kind of dogmatic nutcases that are absolutely positive that they're right about everything. And I can't have to cancel the word nutcases. That's probably politically incorrect, big time.
Absolutely, but we'll overlook that. We'll forgive you this.
But the beauty,
you get one.
That's a warning. But so what the beauty of philosophy for me was, it penetrates as deeply as human beings can penetrate.
Yeah.
And that was fun for me.
Well, I hope everybody stayed with us today. But here we are at college, and we're going through this journey, your journey through life, to become the maverick that you become. I mean, this is a strange environment or a very appropriate environment for a philosopher, I think. But you went to school, you sampled a few courses of action, and you ended up with philosophy, which is a very, very philosophical thought. And then where did you go from there? You went from college.
Literally, I changed my major to philosophy actually at a gathering in England by pure chance, just because people were starting to travel then, and you've been traveling all your life, so you know what it's like. I wasn't even diasporized, and I started traveling to Europe. I went to Europe for my first time in 1970, and I happened to go to a meeting of a group in Nottingham called the Life of the Mind seminar. And actually it was a combination between that and the Aristotelian Society. So two groups combined, and they discussed issues. And I'm going to be honest with you, they everybody who presented papers there went right over my head, right? And I would just grasp onto any little thing I could to make me feel as though I was understanding. All I knew is that I loved it. I just loved it, and went back and started majoring in philosophy after my sophomore year.
And all this while your dad was was he ever in the skunk works?
Yes, he was.
In Burbank?
Yeah, he was. He was in the skunk works, yes.
And are you allowed to tell me what projects he worked on?
Well, look, I might have mentioned this to you before. My dad was kind of awkward for me because every kid wants to look up to their father and ask them when they come home from work,
what did you do today?
What did you do today? And my father would always tell me the same thing, and it would always be, I can't talk about it. And then if I asked more, well, come on, surely you can talk about it, because I was kind of insistent. Surely you can talk about it. And then he instead of talking about it, he would tell me about security clearances. And the security clearance he had, and what it allowed him to do and what it didn't allow him to do. Right. And so for his whole time at Lockheed, or nearly all of it, he could never talk to me.
If only we could have, it would have been so interesting, because Skunk Works is, of course, a legend, and, in our minds more than anything else. But, okay, so you went to this seminar in Nottingham, and like Robin Hood, you were transformed. You came back to the U.S.?
Yes.
And then?
Came back to the U.S. and spent the next year doing philosophy. And while I was there, because I had enjoyed England so much, I applied for a study abroad program and spent a year in Sheffield, went back to California, and finished my degree. And meanwhile, while I was there, I applied to go back to England, because I really liked it there, obviously. Right. And I went back to study at Oxford for 1 year, which is basically student heaven. So if you have any British followers on this and your podcast, it was for me student heaven. I mean,
it's a very beautiful part of England. I mean, England has some beautiful spots, but that's a very beautiful part of England. I lived not far from there for a year when I was in England, and it's a lovely town, and it's a very special place. So you studied for a year there.
Studied for a year, had an opportunity to study longer, but was lured away because I'm American. I wish I hadn't been so American. I was lured back to the U.S. by money. Duke University offered me...
So philosophers are also interested in money?
Philosophers are interested in staying alive.
Okay. That was nearly a shock to my system, but okay, I can get that. So you went to Duke.
I came back to go to Duke.
Which is just around the corner from where I live, by the way.
Yeah.
So there you were at Duke.
Yes, I was at Duke for 8 years.
Wow.
For the 2 years, they sent me to Berlin for 2 years. So I was in Berlin for 2 years.
Wow. That's the center of philosophy in your pre-war Europe.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, and that was nice too. I was in Berlin before the fall of the wall. I was there during the wall time.
Very interesting.
From 79 to 81.
Just before the fall of the wall.
Yeah, before the fall of the wall.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you get to East Berlin at all?
I was in East Berlin 2 days a week because I loved it there.
Wow. And you loved it why?
I loved it because it was simple.
Yeah. It was like the 50s.
It was like a time warp. It was like the 50s, exactly.
Right.
They drove interesting little cars called Trabants. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And there were very few of them.
Yes.
And
you had to walk everywhere or take a bus that sometimes never arrived, or take the train.
I don't think I ever took a bus.
Oh, really?
In East Berlin, I took a lot of subways.
Yes. Yeah.
U-Bahn and S-Bahn.
Yes.
Yeah. But and I just had a great time there. Not to mention the fact, and it goes back once again to the mercenary nature of this particular philosopher type.
Yeah.
My money went so far.
Yes.
I shouldn't admit a lot of this stuff on your podcast, but everybody was exchanging money on the black market.
Right.
And so you exchange money on the black market and get somewhere between 4, 5, 10 times the face value, right?
Right.
And that means that when you're there, you go to the finest restaurants that East Berlin has, and they took pride.
Yes.
I mean, it was
There were some outstanding hotels as well. There were some very fine hotels, very fine restaurants. Yeah.
Yep. And I rarely got strip searched. You know what? Some of the border guards at Checkpoint Charlie, which is where I usually cross, some of them came to know me, but they could never. They're essentially bureaucrats.
Right.
Even the nice ones. If you could coax a smile out of them, you were a great day.
Right. That's it's fascinating. So when the wall fell, when you saw all those, iconic shots on TV, you must have felt something. You must have been quite. What was it like for you when you saw that happen?
Let me go back and say something more about Socrates.
Yeah.
Not because it's just to do it, but Socrates thought that the goal was not to get at the truth, but to get at a state called aporia. Aporia, it's a state where you just realize that things are beyond your ability to comprehend. And I have to confess that I wasn't euphoric about the change. I loved it the way it was. I wasn't sad to see the wall fall, but on the other hand, I just had aporia. I was just confused by it. So I couldn't celebrate.
But it was a wonderful place for somebody not from there to go there when you had money in your pocket. And
You're right. Yeah.
And so, I can understand entirely the viewpoint. There are still places like that on Earth today. Not many, but there are those places on Earth today where it is wonderful to view, just like one would go to view, creatures in a zoo.
Visiting, that's as a visitor.
Yeah, as a visitor.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. So then you were in Berlin for 2 years studying, and you spoke German?
Yeah.
And you learned German when you arrived, or you had already done some German study?
I took German in high school.
Okay. And you took German in high school, but why? I don't remember in those days us doing German.
What? You don't remember us doing? We had, I went to a high school that offered German, and
wow,
still to this day, Herr Skolvin was my teacher's name, and I still have very fond memories of him.
Wow.
He tried to work with me. I was a completely useless person. I was a totally rebellious adolescent.
Yeah.
Made life hell for my teachers, for my parents, for everybody with.
But I see nothing's changed. I have to say nothing's changed, because you're just as rebellious these days.
Maybe so. I don't know about that.
We did a tour of this wonderful gallery, and I could feel the rebelliousness at every point.
I graduated Duke, and in the meantime, I had kind of fallen in love with a state in the United States, North Carolina.
Yes, as one does.
It's a delightful place.
Yes.
However, I had no idea what it was like in other parts of the state. I had fallen in love with Durham, right? And I decided because of that I would apply for jobs here, and I ended up taking a job at UNC Pembroke. At the time, it was Pembroke State University. I ended up taking a job here where we're sitting today. 8 miles from here is where the university is. And this was a shock, right? I mean, even I came for my interview, and then I at the time I was still living in Durham and partly in Chapel Hill, and I still didn't have a sense of what it was like here, because I just came for my interview, and they offered me the job. and I took the job.
Now, I think we should just stop and talk about Pembroke because it's a unique institution, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not your conventional state university. So talk about Pembroke a little bit, about what it is.
Well, okay. Historically, it started off as a normal school, and I don't know what that comes from, but it was Pembroke Normal School for Indians, not Native Americans. It was called for Indians. So still to this day, as I mentioned before, a lot of the local people prefer to be called Indians instead of Native Americans.
And these are Lumbee.
These are Lumbees. They're Lumbees. Yeah. It's an unrecognized group of people who in the beginning were kind of challenging for me, partly because of the fact that the dialect is borderline incomprehensible.
So it has some southern features to it, but it also and it's very country.
Very country.
Very country. I mean, I've actually heard the intonation. I've heard the language spoken, and so these students come to you from conventional schools all over the area, and this area, as you said, is it's principally the Lumbee Indian unrecognized tribe, but it's a tribe. And they claim they're a tribe. I remember arriving in the United States in North Carolina in 1982, and just at that time there was a Lumbee insurrection. There was a gunfight, and they were revolting, and they were trying to get themselves recognized at that time, and they still haven't been recognized.
Well, gunfighting is a thing.
Yes,
it's a local thing, and at the time when I first arrived here in 1983, I lived in Pembroke for my first few years, and virtually every night there were gunshots.
Yeah,
which prepared me pretty much for living in Red Springs now. But, and in the beginning, it was hard for me to adapt to the Lumbee because, they're unique. I had been around a lot of Hispanics in California, and I lived abroad for quite a time. My parents had a house in Mexico, but this was a unique thing.
Yeah,
and in the beginning, it was hard for me to get across to the students what I was doing because, frankly, I didn't water down my classes. I told all my students, look, you're here, you're paying a relatively low price for this, but I'm going to give you exactly what I would give you if I were teaching at Carolina or Duke or Davidson. And those are the three schools I said, that's exactly the course I'm going to give you. And I didn't water down vocabulary. Yeah. I didn't water down anything. I tried to get my students to come to class with a dictionary. And whenever I used a word they didn't know, they should look it up. But in the beginning, it was hard for me with the Lumbee. In the course of the last 40 years, I've learned to really, really, really respect the Lumbee.
Yeah.
Because as an unrecognized people, they have managed to produce medical practitioners coming out the wazoo. They've got doctors, dentists, veterinarians, and plus they've got a bank, the Lumbee Guarantee Bank. When I first arrived here, there were many dirt roads. They're not dirt anymore. And many of the Lumbees are well-to-do. And one of my favorite things about them is they buy art. They're not getting the subsidies.
Right.
So whatever they've got here,
right,
and I'm claiming that they have quite a bit, they've gotten for themselves, which is inspiring to me.
So you adopted Red Springs after living in Pembroke.
Yes.
For 35 years or something.
No, I only lived in Pembroke for a few years, and I lived in Lumberton for a few years. Right. But then finally I came here, and this is the first place locally that I actually liked.
Really? And so what was it about Red Springs that you liked?
Well, it used to be pretty.
Okay.
Which is always nice.
Yeah.
And I liked the people.
Yeah.
And the people were still to this day. We have some of the friends that I made early on, and we still help each other. The idea of helping each other is nice, and mutual respect.
Yeah.
There are elements of being here that I don't like.
Yeah.
We've got a triracial or even four-racial community where the degree of harmony is not what anyone would want.
Right.
So, and that's making it awkward for any projects that require people to work together.
Yes. So, we're going to photograph the town and just get a sense of the town, and we're going to travel around it and photograph it. But I would say that this is a classic small North Carolina town, pretty hard on its luck, and we're going through hard times. It used to be a different town, as most small towns in North Carolina was, but now it's really facing just the same conditions as rural America is facing.
Yeah.
And I travel a lot by road across the country. And I've given up the days of flying, and once I retired, I decided the road is the place, and I've learned a lot about this country on the roads. And one of the things I've learned is that what we see in Red Springs is we see all over Middle America, all over Middle America. So what's happening in Red Springs is not unique.
Yeah.
But what you're doing in Red Springs is extraordinary. So what in the world is this all about?
Well, I mentioned before that my wife Irina and I, we're very sort of codependent partners. We do everything together and have for a long time. But we went to Lake City, South Carolina, and we witnessed the transformation there
Of that
town, and we had been through similar kind of devastating trends here in Red Springs, and we just decided to that it would be interesting to give it a try. We both love art, do art. I've been doing art since I was a little kid. I didn't mention that before, but in junior high school and high school, college, graduate school. While I was at Duke, I got to take some classes in art with a guy named Vernon Pratt, their art teacher there, and I've always done art. And so my wife and I just found ourselves doing art all the time, and loving art more and more as we did it. I can't say that I have the same feeling for it now after being a professional for gallerists. Artists sort of drive me crazy, and art itself has started to drive me crazy. But
business will do that to art.
But then we decided that we liked the town enough. My wife kind of fell in love with it. She's a big city girl. She's living in New York for a long time. She's lived in Moscow, not Idaho, but Moscow, Russia for a long time. She's a big city girl, but she got adjusted to it here and learned to like it or even love it. And we decided, we've got all of our savings that we've acquired, mine since I was 15 years old. Right? And I've got to do something with it. And we decided to invest it here.
This is the most remarkable thing. I mean, I guess, there have been several towns in the middle of the country that have been transformed by art. I'm thinking about northern Arkansas. I don't know if you know Crystal Bridges.
I don't.
There's an art gallery in Crystal Bridges. Which was built by the Waltons, or at least by one of the Walton family, that has transformed that town so dramatically. I mean, Walmart has transformed northern Arkansas, but with it, in a commercial sense. But that art, that museum has transformed the town culturally. So, there have been quite a few transformations of that nature. But this is truly remarkable because you come down this relatively devastated, or not even relatively, devastated Main Street, And, I turned the wrong turn, the first light instead of the second light. And I looked around and I said, wow, maybe I shouldn't be here, and I turned the car around and came here and drove into the back lot and, looked around and said, well, is this an art gallery? And then, of course, you walk in and it's entirely, transformed. So it is remarkable. So how do you do business here? How do people troop here from the cities? Do they storm your doors?
Some do. Yeah, we have a lot of good customers coming from Wilmington.
Yes.
I know it sounds odd because Wilmington has several art galleries.
Yes, they do.
And we have a lot of people coming from South Carolina.
Yeah.
And surprisingly now, and you would resonate with this, we have people coming from places like Cary.
Yes.
Yeah, and we know that artists want to show, and we put our calls out, and so people come from Raleigh, Cary, a lot of people from Moore County, from Southern Pines, Pinehurst, Spring Pines,
absolutely,
and they also bring their friends, which is great because their friends tend to buy, and frankly, we don't have the kind of happy little town that would be conducive to foot traffic. It's the two of the main businesses on Main Street are rehab centers,
right?
Which pretty much puts it puts the kibosh on the chances of coming here with kids,
right?
But we like to throw good parties whenever we have an opening. We bring musicians and food and we have the art, and we invite all who are interested, and usually we have about 70 to 80 people, or up to, the biggest has been 110, and basically what it is a party. Neither my wife nor I have been real party throwers. We both love to go to parties, but we've never really enjoyed throwing parties. But now
you're learning how.
We're learning how to be the party giver,
right?
And it's actually quite fun, to make sure everybody's having a good time, or at least to do our best, to make sure everybody's having a good time,
right? And Irina, you talked about her briefly, but she has the most remarkable story. I mean, in terms of her, she comes from Uzbekistan. Mm-hmm. Her family was forcibly moved to Moscow, or forcibly moved to Uzbekistan from Korea.
No, actually, her family lived in Korea at a time in the 1900s when Japan had invaded Korea.
Yeah.
Korea is accustomed to being invaded. They've been invaded by everybody.
And it may happen again.
Yeah, it may. But her family, if you can, you leave in a situation like that. So her family packed up their stuff, what they could get on, carry, maybe just on foot, right? And headed north. And at the time, there weren't fixed borders like there are now, so you didn't have to worry about being apprehended at a border. So they went into the Russian region, and in 1917, of course, that all changed, and then in the 20s you had
Stalin.
You had Stalin, and Stalin relocated people, and Stalin tended to relocate based on ethnicity. Yeah. So relocated the Koreans in Uzbekistan. And that's where my wife was born. She, one of the great things about immigrants is that they had the wherewithal to do something.
Yeah.
They wanted to do something. And her family has always been the sort of people who want to do something. And the something that they could do in the Soviet Union after Stalin was education.
Right.
So that was her avenue, and she took advantage of it. She studied at the two finest universities in the Soviet Union.
Right.
As an undergraduate at Moscow State University,
Right.
and then as a graduate student at the Academy of Sciences.
Right.
The two finest there are, and she ended up with a PhD, and then came here. And then we met on her very first day when she came here
Wow.
to teach and to study at UNCP. And we came in contact with each other at the cafeteria.
Sparks flew.
No sparks flew. But however, it was a situation like look at UNCP at the time. Basically, it was small enough so that everybody knew everybody, right? But I didn't know her.
Right.
So, naturally I would be inclined. So I was just looking at her because she was somebody I didn't know.
Right.
And so then it turned out that the very next day, I showed up at her Russian class, not knowing she was the teacher. I just wanted to take the Russian class. So I went to the Russian class. She was the teacher. And then she started attending my philosophy classes. So for that year, I took Russian and she took philosophy, and then we stayed in contact and got married.
Wow, what a story. Amazing story. And she's happy here in Red Springs.
I would say you'd have to ask her, but since I'm the interviewee here, I would say yes, she is.
Has to say that.
I would say yes, she is. She's and we're both experiencing something that you've done all your life, being an entrepreneur, and it is not easy, right?
Not easy.
It is not easy at all.
And I've got news for you.
Yeah,
Not easy at first, and then it gets harder.
that's
There's no relief. They never let up. They never let up.
Yeah.
So that's
Great
just,
to know.
Yeah.
It's been a major challenge, but it's like, here I am, 74.
Yeah.
I've been retired for 7 years, and every day presents a new professional challenge.
Right.
If nothing else, just, there's a saying about something being like herding cats, but I'll tell you what, herding cats is nothing compared to herding artists. Artists are a different breed. You might know that from professional
I've
experience.
been married to one for a long time. We've been married for, we celebrated our 50th anniversary many years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, that we're approaching the next one. So, it's fascinating to me, somebody of your background making such a huge change, and not just saying, well, I'm going to start a small business. This is not a small business. This is a very ambitious project. It's a huge project, and it's certainly garnered a name for itself in this very short period of time. Probably not that short a period of time, but it's certainly garnered.
Well, we've been open for 19 months.
Yeah.
And what's interesting for us is that, frankly, I didn't know what to expect,
Right.
but I expected it to be much more parochial. We ended up with a whole bunch of different spaces here. As I said, we had to buy other things. So we bought other spaces we're converting into studios, art studios, we already have, and into a pop-up gallery. So we're trying to transform, not single-handedly because we're working together, but we're trying to transform Red Springs into an art place.
Like Lakeland.
Like Lake City, that's right.
City.
That's right. But as you were saying, every day presents new challenges.
Yeah. And so it wasn't so much the maverick in you that drove you to do this, but your love of the place and your sense of what you could do for the place.
Yes.
And so this was a conscious attempt to do this transformation for this place
Yes.
that you love so much.
Yeah.
An extraordinary idea. It's an extraordinary idea. Well, it's been a very interesting conversation. I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Larry, I'd like to welcome you to
Thank
Red
you.
Springs Art Space on behalf of myself and my wife. Come here, sweet. Come here just a second, just to show everybody that this is a joint effort. This is my wife, Irina, and I'm Jeffrey Geller. We opened this art space, an art gallery in Red Springs, North Carolina. You'll see it's a very unlikely place for an art gallery.
Only a maverick would ever think about doing that.
We opened it about 19 months ago, and we're still in existence. You can see some of the upcoming shows. This is my show coming up. It's my first show here after 19 months. And I didn't really want to have it, but I got a grant and from Cumberland County, which is where Fayetteville is. And one of the stipulations was that I have a show to demonstrate that I benefited from their grant. And here's the big show coming up. We're gonna have 100 works by an internationally acclaimed artist. She goes by just one name, Shoshana. She died in 2015. Her son contacted us when we bought one of Shoshana's pieces and asked if we would be interested in a show. Interestingly, he lives in Vienna, Austria. So what started off as a little sort of mom and pop place, it's not little as you'll see, but what started off as a very quaint little gallery now has contacts in Paris, in Vienna, and we're expanding very rapidly. So now I'd like to invite you to come inside.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I'm going to follow you.
Okay. This is the entrance to our gallery. It's a back entrance, but it's the one we use because we've got a parking lot back there, and we sort of operate as a dual purpose place. Irina, my wife, found out that in German there's a word for this. The word is Kunstkammer, and Kunstkammer, Kunst is German for art, and Kammer is room. And so we have a combination between art, which we're going to concentrate on today, and antiques. So come this way, and I'll show you the first antique room. This room right here is dedicated to antiques. We have been collecting for a long time. We both of us have been collecting. My wife mainly in New York City, me mainly in North Carolina, but also in Europe. We've been collecting for 40 years, and finally we just had so much that we needed to do something with it, and we're sharing it with the public, and also we're sharing it with possible public consumers who come and buy things. And frankly, more things sell from our antique space than from our art space.
This bowl with the Invictus scroll on it, the Invictus shield on it, reminds me of my childhood. My mother had these things, and she had the silverware, and she would have to polish the silverware, or the servants had to polish the silverware.
Yeah.
Had it in those days. Amazing.
Well, it's been a pleasure collecting it, and my wife's very good at it. I've taken over the responsibility of looking things up online to determine their value so that we can sell them at a price that's fair to everyone. Incidentally, just a quick advertisement for our gallery. Being in North Carolina, especially in this part of North Carolina, we're in Robeson County, in Red Springs, in Robeson County, and it's one of the two poorest counties in North Carolina. But what that means is that we can sell everything we sell for half the price that it would sell for in places like Durham or Asheville. Right? Usually a third of the price, so it's very favorable for outsiders.
Is that because your overhead is lower, your costs are lower?
Everything is lower here, yes, yeah. Yes. Everything is lower here than in places like Durham, Chapel Hill, Asheville, Wilmington. Carrie. And now we're entering this is the main part of the gallery. This is what we refer to as room 1.
How did you find a space like this in Red Springs, North Carolina?
Well, when we made the decision to start an art gallery, and we made that after a whole bunch of weird kind of historical vicissitudes.
Right.
And the main thing that was very good to us, I shouldn't say this probably on this recording, but COVID was very good for us. My wife was busy going back and forth between New York City and here. We have a place in New York City in Manhattan. And we were busy going back and forth. But mainly she had to work there because she's in advertising. She's an engineer, and she's very good with technology, by the way. But she had to be at work every day mainly on the Lower West Side. We lived on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. But when COVID struck, she could work from home. And once you can work from home, you can be anywhere. And so we ended up coming here. We started doing more and more art, and eventually we had so much art that we had to do something with it. We contacted some local people and asked about possible spaces. We also went to a place called Lake City, South Carolina, which is a fabulous art center. And the town had been through a period when it was trying to recover from the absence of textiles. Before it was agriculture and textiles. And when that ended, and as it did, the people were becoming poorer and poorer. Fortunately, they found a benefactor, a lady who she had a heck of a lot of money. I'm not going to tell you how many digits, but a lot of her money went into saving the town. They created basically a town of just art gallery after art gallery after art gallery, and created a thing of beauty. And we decided we can do that on a smaller scale. So we contacted some local people. They drove us from one part of the town to another looking for the ideal space, and eventually we think we found it.
So this space was what? I mean, it's a gigantic space.
This space is the total, and you'll see all of it before the tour is over, but it's 19,000 square feet, which is very sizable for an art gallery by any standards, even Asheville standards. And we've toured around Asheville extensively and seen the big spaces there.
And certainly a Manhattan standard.
Oh, definitely by Manhattan standards, yeah. Or even,
except for the giant, the giant public galleries.
There is a place near Rochester that has somebody converted. Do you know that space?
Yes,
somebody converted aircraft hangars to an art space. Right. That's a totally different. That's a different league. Yeah. But anyway, we bought this in parts. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but in order to get the space here, we had to buy a total of 7 properties just because of legal technicalities. So we own basically half of downtown Red Springs now, not because we wanted to, but because the people who owned them, and they bought them after a tornado devastated the town in 1984, they had aged out. Many of them had passed away, and they wanted to be out of the real estate business. They wanted to liquidate everything, and they said everything or nothing. So we agreed to buy everything, not because we wanted it, but because we wanted this.
There must have been a huge crowd of buyers chasing these properties.
Well, obviously there wasn't. However, the way it works is, and we know this because we go to auctions all the time, as soon as somebody likes something, somebody else likes it. And so other people, and so we did have to compete with other prospective buyers.
That's fascinating. And that's unusual, and we'll talk about it later about Robeson County and how unique it is. It's one of the unique counties in North Carolina and maybe in the United States. But take us around the gallery. Give us a sense of what we're looking at.
This is a continuation of the Kunstkammer, meaning this is the antique section. We have a very sizable collection of quilts. And quilt quilting I regard as an art. It's like a folk art, but it's very definitely an art. And the fact that you find a bunch of elderly, generally ladies, doing it doesn't diminish the fact that it's an art form. And you can just look at the patterns on these and you'll see that they're wonderful to look at. Anyway, I'm not going to take up too much time here, but here we have a huge collection of quilts. This is just the beginning. The rest of the quilts are in our house. We also have a lot of pottery. North Carolina is famous for clay. We have great clay for pottery in North Carolina, and we've collected our share of pottery over the years. We've been collecting for a long time, as I said, and we have a lot of famous things. So, for example, with this Russell Wright, last time we were in Manhattan, we went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there was a Russell Wright collection there. So, it made us feel kind of good to share their thought space. Anyway, this is the beginning of the art zone right here. This is our main ceramic collection. I also do ceramics, so I am deeply appreciative of the work that goes into each one of these pieces. These are masks here by a woman named Jeanette Hopper, who lived in Red Springs for about 15 years. She's now in Wilmington, but she's one of the artists we represent. How many artists do we represent now?
About 15.
We represent about 15 artists, and I know it sounds strange, but we have artists contacting us on a regular basis from Europe, right? Trying to get representation. It's quite fascinating. Here we are in good old, Red Springs, North Carolina.
But the truth of the matter is that the art business is no longer a place like a gallery. So much of the art is sold online, and so your representation of people in Europe is not because the crowds are flocking here.
We don't have any foot traffic at all.
Right.
No. However, I think we must be doing something right.
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons we're doing something right is because we're novices. We both, and we'll talk about this later, I guess, but my wife has her PhD in history, and I have a PhD in philosophy.
Well, clearly, perfect business background.
Very
Yeah.
minimal business sense. So we're sort of discovering along the way each of the things we need to do, sometimes making mistakes.
Yes. But that's the nature of a maverick. A maverick is not burdened by the past or burdened by habit. Is not burdened by what is expected. They're going to find new ways and novel ways and probably more perfect ways to grow their businesses or grow themselves. So it's...
Well, I like that, but what we are burdened by, in a way, is finances, because as a philosophy professor, I didn't go into it for the money, or if I had gone into it for the money, I would have been sorely disappointed.
Right.
in Casablanca. So as we go along here, we segue from antiques to art, and this is one of the artists we've represented recently. This person is in your neck of the woods, he's in Hillsborough. This person, Henryk Fantazos, is Polish. He's 81 years old, and you can see, did you already capture some of these when you're walking around? They're amazing, aren't they? Yeah, he's one of the people we represent, and his show was the previous one. People really liked it, but the prices are a little too high for the locals. And you can see as you come along here, more of his work, the beauty of his work. It's a little risque also for local taste, but he does exquisite work, and we're proud of it. As we go along here, Adam, we see pieces from local people. The person who did this is from Red Springs. Her name is Corinna McMillan, and she does first-rate work. She's now teaching at the Montessori school in Raleigh. The person to the right, as you look from there, Ingrid Royer or Johnson Royer, is she's Norwegian, and she lived in Red Springs for a while too. So we do try to focus on and give attention to local artists, even if they were only here for a short time. You go along here and you see there's an Escher. It's not, he didn't have anything to do with the making of it, but it's a beautiful piece. This piece right here, and he's quite famous, and if you come along here, Adam, you notice that here's a Salvador Dali, and this is it's a limited edition print, but it's nice to have those things in Red Springs, because otherwise the people here would never have a chance to see these things, and these are iconic, right? So it's very nice for them.
How do you verify it's a true Dali? I mean, what is the? Because I've seen so many Dalis in so many places.
It's a great question.
Is there a provenance you can point to?
Well, unfortunately, I'm kind of a little bit stumped by that, because a lot of the art buying and selling business depends, like a lot of the economy in general and like life in general, on trusting people.
Right.
And so there's got to be a minimal amount of trust involved, at least a minimal amount, right? The place where these are most likely to be forged, and it's not that likely that these would be forged, but one thing you can do is you can check for pencil, right? If it has pencil, then it would have taken more work than most people who are forgers, even writing something like that, are willing to do.
Yeah, one of the things that gives me confidence in this one, talking as an absolute non-expert, is that it's not perfect enough to be a forgery. Forgeries tend to be very precise and very exact, and you can see the pencil. You can see the handwork and so on.
Another thing we do, Larry, is this. We have some experts. I should have. One of our experts is an artist and also a framer. He did these works over here, and these are his. We call him Bobby, but it's Bob Dean. This person right here, he does fabulous work, and this is listed, and he sells internationally, and he also is represented by us. And all of the works that we buy at auction, if we have any doubt at all, we take them to him and we break them down, right? We take them out of their frame,
right,
and we examine them close up, and he looks for textural changes, differences, and it seems to, so far it's served us well.
Good.
Come this way. They're very interesting because they're by a local person. Her name is Gwen Campen, and she dug them up. They're all roots. These are all roots. They were all taken from underground, and she dug them up. She's excellent with a chainsaw, and she chainsawed them into shapes. And then my wife and I set them in cement. Keeping on going. This is an adaptation. I don't know whether, we decided that it was more interesting to have little installation spaces where the dressing rooms used to be, and so we took out the enclosing thing here, and then we.
So when you say dressing rooms, this was a department store?
This was a department store. It's been through a whole bunch of different incarnations, but it was the last time around. It was a Goodies. It was a Goodies. Before that, it was called a BC Moore's, but when it was a Goodies, we actually shopped here, and it went out of business with the pandemic.
Right.
And once again, we benefited from the pandemic. They went out of business, and within 3 years, we owned the entire place.
So, a story of a lot of these small southern towns is that these department stores grew up from these small Jewish dry goods stores that, immigrant Jews set up. There was a whole network of them, and they, the family financed them. They set up the small stores, true in my home country of South Africa as well. And ultimately they created department stores out of it, and then ultimately they left for the big city, and the
Yeah.
stores, with the town, kind of fell on hard times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we did have a pretty substantial Jewish population, not necessarily in Red Springs, but in Robeson County,
Right.
in Lumberton. The most famous was a men's shop owned by the Weinsteins.
Right. Right.
And of course, all of these spaces, this was used to try on clothes.
Right.
And
right. So
and now.
now you have a installation space rather than a dressing room.
Exactly, and it's gonna serve us.
Yes.
It's nice. It sort of breaks up the overall space.
Right.
These are my ceramic pieces, and the reason that that's important is that I got this grant that I told you about that compelled me to have a solo show for ceramics. So let's proceed. So I'm going to be putting a lot of these pieces out in the middle for my show, which will be coming up. When are we opening, Sweet?
August 1st.
August 1st will be the opening of that. Here we have more of Gwyn Campen's works. This is the Native American section, and it's significant because we live in a county that's kind of culturally dominated by a group of people called the Lumbee. The Lumbee are an unrecognized local group of.
I thought they've just been recognized
Well, when would that have been?
within the last 3 months.
No, they haven't been recognized. No, there's always a very significant opposition to them by other groups, mainly the Cherokee, because there's a finite amount of money to be distributed, and they haven't been recognized. Donald Trump, though, managed to get a huge percentage of their votes, despite the fact that they're traditionally Democratic voters. But they finally recognized that voting Democratic didn't get them anywhere. They started off the poorest, and they ended up the poorest.
Right.
And they're not that way anymore. They're making some money now, and sometimes they come to the back. And by the way, they've been very, very loyal customers here. They sometimes come to the back and they say, "Show us the Indian section." They don't use the term Native American. They want to be referred to as Indians, and we bring them here. It's a meager place, but if you pan around there, you can see that it's a lot of Native American things, Native American artifacts, and this is what they want to see. You know, they're proud of their heritage, and they say, "Take us to the Indian section." So we do, and sometimes they do the great thing of buying stuff.
The collection is very interesting because there's some Western art, but there's a lot of Native American art, so it's kind of crossover in a way.
Well, it's also we buy Native American art from also Mexico, from Canada.
Yes.
And for example, that I think that piece is Canadian. That's Native American from Canada. But this person right here, Corinna McMillan, is one of the people. This is a self-portrait. One of the people we represent, and she's a first-rate artist. This is another one of her pieces, and here's yet another and another and another. Those are all by her.
I think those are the ones that I was struck as very Western, even though she's representing Native American.
She is like nearly everybody around here. We're sort of half and half.
Half and half.
Yeah, and she is half Caucasian and half Native American, and she identifies as Native American.
And would she call herself an Indian, or would she call herself Native American?
Well, you know, she lives in Raleigh, and
So she would be...
she'd be more inclined to call herself a Native American. Yeah, but she's young, and she comes here and visits us, and she's just a wonderful person too. This, as we go around, this is sort of geographically connected because this is Indian, but this is Peruvian right here. These are Peruvian, and this is more of my stuff along here. This is my wife's work right here. This is her zone, and my wife Irina is you saw her when we entered. She was standing next to me, and you'll see her later. She has an interesting background that I'm not going to go into right now. She is Korean racially, but for various historical reasons left Korea and ended up being born in Uzbekistan. And so she's doing everything in her power to, one of the things she's doing to recapture her Korean roots is forcing me to learn Korean. Every single evening, we study Korean together.
And how's that going?
It's going pretty, I'm doing my best. It's not an easy language.
It is not an easy,
yeah. So fortunately it has an alphabet. So I can read okay, but...
So would it be considered easier to learn than, say, Chinese?
They both have advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
Chinese is actually easy because there's no grammar to speak of.
But every word has its own usage rules almost.
You've got to know, I think you've got to know something like at least, I think 2,000 characters to be an 8-year-old. Yeah. But no, Korean is hard. One of the hardest religions I've ever studied was Hebrew. So
yes.
But
at least Hebrew has an alphabet.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any vowels, or didn't have any vowels until recently.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Check out. Show this one. And I just want to say something about my wife's work really quickly, since this is the only time we're going to be able to look at it. She's been doing art for pretty solidly for about 20 years. She was trained in a different field, in history, as I said, and then she became an engineer, and then she started working with this material called hanji. Han is Korean for Korean, and G is Korean for paper. So she works with Korean paper. See with the beautiful textures that you can get. This is all, it's relief, it's raised from the surface. And that's her specialty. You can see it. We're going to bypass these installations, and you can see what she does with the texture. It's quite amazing. And it adds a third dimension, literally. And as I said, she's been working in art for about 20 years, pretty steadily. As we proceed around, some things I'm not drawing attention to because we talked about Henrik, and these are more of Henrik's pieces. I want to say one thing about these very quickly. Artists, professional artists, and Henrik is that very definitely, make their money basically on engravings, right? Because each of these paintings, I can't tell the local people how much they cost because they're poor and they would want to have one for themselves or actually sell it for whatever purposes. But the oils here run about on average about $20,000 each. So the pieces we looked at in the beginning they go from 10 to about $30,000 each. Whereas the engravings, you can see the prices. This engraving right here, and he captures his own original composition, is $890. This is $270, and we approach affordability here, right? With these prices, with his engravings, we approach what people could afford, and that's important for us as a gallery because we've got to have a certain amount of turnover to stay alive. Here we have the work of Paul Van Zandt, a local artist. He lives in Red Springs, and he's one of the people we represent. If you turn to your right, you can see the main work by Lynn Linnemeyer, who's one of the artists we represent. We've had several African American artists here. But she's the main person that we represent. We have two of these walls dedicated to her works, this one and one other, and she also has a big piece like this in another space. One of those spaces we had to buy in order to get this. But the price on this one is $25,000, right? So it's not likely to sell here. Frankly, it's not likely to sell. But it's beautiful here. It looks great from outside, right? So we enjoy having it. And artists love to show their work. Artists just
They love to show their work.
Yeah, sure.
Probably more important than sale.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and Jillian you belong to each other.
Yeah.
So as we go around, a lot of these things are sort of repetitions because here we have more of the work. But isn't it fantastic what Gwyn Campen has done with these? It's quite amazing. And have you ever worked with cement?
No.
Well, I have. And you can see it's sort of funky, but working with cement is quite difficult. And my wife has the advantage, since she's an engineering type, of like following the recipe. Whereas I, because I'm a philosophical type, have the bad inclination to do weird things. Just to see what happens. Here we have another installation. One of the things we collect is mannequins. We decorate the mannequins, and this is the monkey room. This is a local art celebrity, Nyla Chamberlain, and this lady, Sandy Stradle, lives in a place called Whispering Pines. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's in Moore County, but these are people who have had shows with us. Once they have a show, they're entitled to leave their works up for a certain amount of time, and we continue to show their works here. And the main time we have traffic is when we have an opening. You've been to our openings, and it's like a party. What we shoot for is just to have the most enjoyable party we can, with music and food, beverages, including alcohol, and just fun. Sometimes we even dance. We've got a piano in the middle. More of Henrik's works that are hopefully going to make some money. These pieces here, these pieces along here, are mine. This is a big piece. I'm going to stand in front of it so you can get a sense of scale. It's a big piece, and this is an adaptation. This was originally a tapestry, and it had a bunch of holes in it. I repaired the holes, and then created an alphabet. We're in room 2 now, and we have several rooms, as you can see. If you walk around,
how many rooms in all, actually?
Well, we have these 3, plus we have upstairs, plus we have the courtyard. So, and if you count the kitchen as a room, and the meeting space as a room,
yeah,
and that little sort of vestibule on the left with the antiques in the beginning, we have, it sounds like about 9.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, you have an opera house, as one.
And the opera house, we have the opera house, exactly.
As one would expect, and
in rural southeastern North Carolina.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this was at one time a happening cultural center.
Right.
It's nice to preserve that, just to remind us of possibilities.
Right.
This is the next show. This is the next show before it gets hung. This is what it looks like when it's sitting waiting. This is in waiting for the next go around. But right now it's just cluttering up the floor. And this room has our Africana section, and some of these Larry might. I mean, I don't know how far north you ventured, but some of these are real things. Like, you could probably tell which ones are real and which ones are made for tourists. This one, and this one are all real. They're from time gone by. I shouldn't admit that I exported them illegally, so I won't. But it's a matter of paying the right people, and
right.
I did.
And what constitutes legally and illegally is an interesting question in itself.
Yeah. But anyway, these 3 are real things. The others are basically tourist things. But this is our Africana section, and this piece right here is by Shoshana. This is what got Shoshana's son in Vienna interested in us. We posted this internationally on Artsy, and he contacted us and wanted to have a show. So the show that we're having for his daughter, Sashana, we're going to have a long and very deep show for her. She knew a lot of very important people, including Picasso, Giacometti, and many others, Rothko, and she had two disadvantages during her lifetime. A, she was a woman and didn't get shown because of that. B, she was Jewish and didn't get shown because of that. So we're going to try to correct some of that. We've got, as I said, 100 of her works.
I realized she was Jewish the moment I saw her last name, Ephraim, and it says Austrian. Was she born in Austria?
She was born in Austria. But by the way, Ephraim, that name is her married name.
Yeah.
She was a Schuler. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she adopted the art name of Sashana.
So she was born
She was born in Vienna.
Born in Vienna, so she must have left Vienna during the war and come back?
Not during the war. They left because of they had sufficient insight to leave. They left in 1938.
Okay.
Well, they left in 1938. Yeah.
And then returned after the war.
And then returned after the war, but not before she had spent a lot of time in London, Paris, New York.
Gotcha.
And her son was actually born in New York. Okay, let's keep going. This is the Africana section. This person is fairly famous too, by the way, but I'm not going to go into it now. It's just nice for local people to be able to see works that are by people who are recognized outside as qualified.
And there is Brown's Hardware.
What?
Across the road is Brown's Hardware.
Brown's Hardware.
As one would expect in an art gallery.
Yeah, but it is that's Brown's Hardware, and that is where we do a heck of a lot of business. We have made them rich in the process of renovating this building.
Right.
And we have not made ourselves the same. This is one of our artists that we're in the process of growing our representation for. This is the one and only Jillian Goldberg. And
do I know her?
I think you might, but at any rate, we just recently, as a matter of fact, I think yesterday or the day before, chose 7 more of her works, 7 more of Jillian's works to be put on it. We're going to feature her on Artsy. Yes. Anyway, and she lives in Cary, and she's a very talented artist, as you can see. We're now entering what we refer to poetically as Room 3. Room 3 is geographically organized. My wife, she's an organizer, which is wonderful because I'm not so much. This is the Parisian region right here. Actually, this is the French region. So this is dedicated to France. And look at this. This is an interesting configuration in the window. When artists show with us, they get to leave their work, and these pieces were left by Delaney Shin, and these things are. This is a relic of the past in Red Springs, and shows what we were like at one time. We had a conservatory for women at one time, and it turns out that when I lived here, I moved here before Irina moved here, about 35 years ago. Most of the people on the street, the women on the street, were trained musicians. Nearly all of them could play organ, and most of them had their own organs. We preserved at least one of them to remind us and others of our past. This piece right here, Ochterveld, this is 400 years old, and it's valuable. It's valuable enough so that we can't tell people here that it's valuable. My favorite paintings are the ones that are hung straight. We have truck traffic here. Big old trucks come by, and every time a truck goes by, some of the paintings change a little bit, their orientation. This is the British zone right here.
I can tell, and immediately I see the awkward horses.
Yeah. More Brit stuff down here, sort of a comic opera scene. But as we proceed here,
Feels like Oscar Wilde.
it does, doesn't it? What did you want me to point out, sweet? Okay. This is more British stuff, and then here we have a combination between British and American. But the paintings are nice here, but the frames are even better. And here we have more British scenes. Here we have some nice paintings from continental Europe, and then as we go to the back here, we start getting closer and closer to Asia. And this is a Middle Eastern section. Remember, it's all organized geographically. So Middle Eastern section. This is a fairly frequently owned piece that's I think it's from Egypt. But it might have been from Iran. We're not sure about that. But as we go further and further, we go through the Middle East to the Far East. And this is dear to my wife's heart because she's Korean, and she's had an especially good time putting together, curating this part of the gallery. You notice this beautiful partition right here. It's Chinese, and it's got two sides painted by different artists with completely different palettes. And it's quite a wonderful piece, I think. As you go back here, you can see a kimono. This is the Japanese section, and these are Japanese plates and plateware. This is a Chinese artist, right? Chun Ti-fen.
In 1938.
Yeah, and he's still alive, right?
He's still alive.
Yeah.
He's considered to be a father of the Chinese contemporary.
Anyway, this is a nice piece that we do collect partitions a little bit. We are now going upstairs to the Opera House. And this, where we're going to see, is a genuinely functioning, it was functioning opera house. I'll tell you a little bit when we go up. You notice that the stairway itself is kind of interesting. The stairs are a little uneven. This was built in 1900. Go around here. We enter the opera house, and it's worth noting that this was built in 1900, and it functioned as an opera house until the Great Depression. We have playbills that indicate who came through, and there were traveling companies who came through Red Springs and played here. My mind is clear now, at last all too well you can see where we all soon will be. The interesting thing is the acoustics are phenomenal, right? But you can't really pick it up with the microphone, so it's probably just going to be distorted. Anyway, we're still in the process of populating the walls with pieces that celebrate the people who attended the opera about 100 years ago, before it went out of business in the Great Depression. I did the mural, and then I'm putting up pieces of artwork.
I love the mirrors.
Yeah, we will. The mirrors are, yeah.
I love them.
Good, we'll keep them for you.
Are they for sale?
Everything here is for sale.
Everything's for sale.
Everything's for sale.
So,
yeah.
even this beautiful floor.
Isn't it something?
It is beautiful.
Yeah, 125-year-old floor, 125-year-old stage, and 125-year-old elevator. You saw it before, right? Some engineers, mechanical engineers, looked at it and said that there's no reason that it wouldn't function now. If we wanted to, we could make it function, but we'd have to replace the ropes. And I think the ropes are part of the charm of it, so we're going to we're going to leave it as is.
The cost of replacing those ropes would be very significant.
Just imagine that.
Couldn't imagine.
Couldn't even do it.
And then who's the poor victim who would have to test it?
You know, some people tested it inadvertently. There are two people want to come here and take photographs.
And they step up.
And they step up on it, and there's just enough give to scare the heck out of them. So now we're going to go downstairs on a different stairway. This stairway we built because of, well, for legal reasons, we had to have a second egress. Nearly everything we did along the way was monitored by fire marshals and by other people who told us what couldn't be done. And so it's kind of a challenge. It's a challenge to stay within the bounds of acceptability legally. And come this way. We're going right now outside. This space was before indoor. It was, it was, to say it was dingy would be an understatement. It was, this was completely dark. It wasn't lit at all, and it was covered by a roof. It was just part of the indoor of the entire structure. And my wife, Irina, had the brilliant idea, I think it was brilliant, and well, it's obviously brilliant, you can see it, of removing the roof, putting the pergola, replacing the roof with a pergola roof ceiling, and adding lights for the possibility of night celebrations. And then she also designed the planters, and we installed the floor. And
did you have to strip the wall, or was the wall like this already?
This was original wall.
Original wall.
It was original wall. We preserved everything we could.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Eventually, we're going to try to make these plants, sort of ivy-like plants,
right,
grow all the way across the pergola, and that'll be a nice effect.
Right.
For now, this space is only usable in the fall and spring.
In the cool days.
In the mild days.
Yeah.
In July, it's much too hot to have a function. But anyway, these plants, for what it's worth, were all grown by my wife at our house and then transplanted here.
Lovely space.
Thank you. So, I think this completes the tour.